It was a crisp autumn morning in New York City, the kind that painted the streets golden and orange with fallen leaves. The city bustled with its usual rhythm, subways rumbling below the streets, vendors calling out from food carts, and the symphony of footsteps blending into the urban orchestra. Among the sea of faces that moved with purpose, a frail elderly woman named Margaret descended the steps into the subway station, her petite figure wrapped in a wool coat and scarf to shield her from the brisk air. In her hand, she clutched a worn leather handbag, a treasure trove of memories and necessities. Margaret's face bore the lines of a long life filled with love, loss, and resilience. She was on her way to visit her granddaughter, carrying a small box of homemade cookies. Her gait was slow but determined, supported by a cane that clicked rhythmically against the tiled floor of the station. Despite her frailty, Margaret's spirit remained unbroken. Her smile, though subtle, radiated warmth to anyone who cared to notice. As Margaret approached the subway platform, the air grew thicker with the mingling odors of metal and grease. A crowded train roared into the station, screeching to a halt. Passengers spilled out, creating a brief moment of chaos before the next wave pushed their way inside. Margaret waited patiently, her eyes scanning for an open seat. Unbeknownst to her, a shadow moved in the corner of the station. A man in his mid-30s, wearing a hoodie and worn sneakers, lingered near the edge of the crowd. His name was Eddie, and he was no stranger to the art of pickpocketing. Life hadn't been kind to him. Years of hardship and poor choices had led him down a path of petty crime. He spotted Margaret instantly, her vulnerability practically calling out to him. "Easy target," Eddie muttered under his breath. His eyes locked on her handbag, calculating the best moment to strike. Margaret finally boarded the train, finding a seat near the door. She settled in, placing her handbag on her lap, and glanced around the carriage. Opposite her sat a man with a commanding presence, his muscular frame barely contained by his leather jacket. His bald head gleamed under the fluorescent lights, and his piercing eyes scanned the carriage with an almost predatory awareness. It was none other than Dwayne Johnson, the actor and former wrestler known as The Rock. Dwayne had taken the subway that day, a rare occurrence for someone of his stature and fame, to experience the city's pulse firsthand. He wore sunglasses and a baseball cap in an attempt to remain inconspicuous, though his towering physique made anonymity nearly impossible. He had just finished a morning workout and was heading to a meeting with a production company downtown. As the train doors closed and the subway began to move, Eddie positioned himself near Margaret. The carriage rocked gently, and Eddie used the motion to stumble forward, his hand darting toward Margaret's bag. The elderly woman gasped softly, her fingers tightening instinctively around the strap, but her strength was no match for Eddie's quick hands. He yanked the bag free and bolted toward the door at the next station, his heart pounding with adrenaline. Margaret's cry of distress echoed through the carriage. "Stop him, he's got my bag." For a moment, time seemed to freeze. The passengers glanced at each other, some unsure of what to do, others too engrossed in their own worlds to care. But Dwayne Johnson was already in motion. Like a coiled spring releasing its tension, he rose from his seat with lightning speed and barreled toward the thief. Eddie glanced over his shoulder, his eyes widening in terror as he recognized the man pursuing him. "Oh, crap," he muttered, pushing his way through the crowded platform as the train screeched to a halt. But Dwayne was relentless. His powerful strides closed the distance in seconds. "Stop!" Dwayne's voice boomed, commanding authority. Passengers turned their heads, some pulling out their phones to record the unfolding drama. Eddie tried to disappear into the maze of commuters, but there was no escaping The Rock. Dwayne grabbed him by the back of his hoodie, lifting him effortlessly off the ground. Eddie squirmed, kicking his legs, but it was futile. "You messed with the wrong person today," Dwayne growled, his voice low and menacing. Margaret had made her way off the train by then, assisted by a kind stranger. She approached cautiously, her face a mix of fear and gratitude. Dwayne handed the handbag back to her, his expression softening. "Is this yours, ma'am?" he asked. Margaret nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. "Thank you, young man. You're my hero." The crowd erupted into applause, some cheering, others shouting Dwayne's name. Eddie hung his head, realizing his escape was impossible. A transit officer arrived moments later, taking custody of the thief. As the commotion died down, Dwayne knelt beside Margaret. "Are you okay? Do you need help getting where you're going?" Margaret smiled, her hands trembling as she clutched her reclaimed bag. "I'm fine, thanks to you. You're a kind soul, young man. The world needs more people like you." Dwayne chuckled, his charisma shining through. "Just doing what's right, ma'am." He stayed with her until she boarded the next train, ensuring she felt safe and secure. The viral videos of the incident spread like wildfire, with headlines praising Dwayne Johnson's heroic actions. But for Dwayne, it wasn't about the recognition. It was about standing up for what was right. As Margaret's train pulled away, she looked out the window, watching the man who had come to her rescue fade into the distance. Her heart swelled with gratitude, knowing that even in a world filled with challenges, there were still heroes among us, some disguised as everyday passengers on a subway,